What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. What is going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Hopefully everyone's doing well and having a good day. I've been thinking a lot about choking and blowing it in sports, obviously with what happened to Rory on Sunday afternoon at Pinehurst, and how that relates to football and a couple quarterbacks who have been through some devastating moments. Now, unlike Rory, they don't have any championships, but I kind of wanted to dive into Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson. I think two guys that are right there on the cusp, but just can't quite get over the hump when it comes to beating Patrick Mahomes. And then the big news from last week, which was a wow, was an eye-opener, was the contract the Jags gave Trevor Lawrence. It was crazy. I don't know how else to say it. I think most universally had the same reaction. So wanted to dive into that, then how it impacts a bunch of different guys. You know, did Jared Goff get screwed? Dak Prescott, who's looking for a new contract, how it impacts Jordan Love, Tua Tagovailoa, and looking on the horizon, a man in Santa Clara named Brock Purdy, what it means for his potential number. So we'll dive into all that and then just hit on some other NFL stuff. Brandon Aiyuk saying some stuff on the old TikTok. In-season Hard Knocks, we know where that's going to be. And Belichick seems like he's got a new love of his life. So we'll dive into all this. Excited. Football now is stalled on vacation for the week or for the month, really, with everyone going on vacation. So don't worry about us. We will continue to have podcasts, and that's going to be the game plan moving forward. But before we dive into some football talk, I got to tell you about my close personal friends and the official ticketing partner of this podcast, Game Time. I've been hammering this drum for a while. Middlekauff's like, do you need to read these Game Time ads every single pod? Yes, I do. Contractually obligated / love these guys. Use them for everything. From games, baseball, hockey, football, to concerts, to comedy shows. Get out. Go do something fun with a loved one, with a friend. It's the summertime. We're all looking for things to do. I think as you get older, you're like, what am I going to do? And this is an easy one. Go to an event. Go to a game, go to a concert, have some fun. There's nothing better. Baseball game, summer, have a few pops, have a hot dog, have some nachos, a pretzel, and just enjoy yourself and save a little money while you're at it, because take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. One thing that is not really debatable, that an epic collapse, a choke job, a disastrous finish in any sport, especially in big moments, in the playoffs, in majors like in golf the other day, you name it, is fascinating to watch. It is riveting TV. For as great as it is to watch a guy with just a historic performance, you could argue there's nothing quite like a collapse. Now, if you're betting on someone or a huge fan of the team, it sucks. It is gut-wrenching. I'll never forget, when I was a kid, I was a big Sacramento Kings fan, and they had the Lakers on the ropes, and then Robert Horry, Vlade tipped it out to Robert Horry, and he hit a three, and then the mob got involved with Tim Donaghy, and the rest is history. And it sucked. But from an entertainment value, it didn't get much better. I was at Game 7 of the 2016 NBA Finals when the Warriors lost to the Cavs. Now, I was rooting for the Warriors, but you were on the edge of your seat watching that game. And I think the powerful emotion that watching someone or a team fall apart, you could argue there's nothing quite like it in all of sports. I'm recording this before the basketball game tonight. The hockey game, the Oilers were dead to rights, and somehow they won like 75-1 the other night. But if either one of those two teams were to come back, it just would be a historic collapse. And by the time you got to game 6 or 7, it'd be pretty riveting. And the thing you've seen in football is because forever, like in golf, which I like Tiger Woods as much as any athlete of all time. It felt like when he was in control, he was never going to lose. He was never going to choke. And it felt like people fell apart around him. And I think you see that sometimes in football. And I think Patrick Mahomes and just the Chiefs in general, because unlike golf, it's not an individual sport. Patrick Mahomes this year relied on his defense to be awesome, and they were. But it does feel like when you're playing him in a big game, other guys get tight. And you saw it this year with Lamar Jackson, and their offensive coordinator got really tight and had an awful game, and they blew it. I was all in on the Ravens for that game. I had $5,000 on them, which is a large NFL bet for me. And even though I know Andy and Veach and I love those guys, I just thought, like, how are the Ravens going to lose this game? And then by the end of the first half, you're like, this is a joke. What is going on? And Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, to me, right now, are the second and third best quarterback. Burrow's in his own little category. He's the one guy that slayed the dragon, but he's been injured. It's hard to know if he can sustain a season right now. He's got a big year coming up. Can he stay on the field? But we've seen him do it. Like, he got over the hump. Hell, he was winning the Super Bowl with, I don't know how many minutes left, 5-6 minutes left against the LA Rams. Easily could have won the Super Bowl. Like, I've seen Joe Burrow not get tight, not play bad in big moments. And I think when you look at Lamar Jackson and you look at Josh Allen going against Mahomes, it's like they've kind of had different routes, because the 13-second loss to the Kansas City Chiefs when Buffalo Bills blew it, that was not on Josh Allen. I looked at Josh Allen's playoff numbers today. He's been remarkable in the playoffs. He has 21 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. And if you would have told me, like, sounds about right, because the eye test, he has been a baller in the playoffs. And you know what the Chiefs would tell you? We'd rather play Lamar Jackson than Josh Allen. I don't blame them. I think if you put Josh Allen on this Ravens team, Chiefs don't win that game. You are dependent as a quarterback on your defense, on your coaching staff. It wasn't his fault. The defense, I don't know, had no clue what they were doing a couple years ago. And you look at Lamar Jackson, his statistics in the playoffs have not been good. He's thrown 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He's had some good rushing performances, but in the losses, they have not been good. Now, the rushing performance against the Chiefs, I don't put that all on him. That's on the offensive coordinator. I don't know. Call double the amount of runs. But ultimately, watching those teams lose to the Chiefs is just a fascinating experience. And to overcome this, and this is a thing I've been saying about the Chiefs for a while, they feel a little bit like Tiger Woods right now. Who is going to bet against them this year in a playoff game? Whether it's on the road, whether it's at home, if Mahomes is there and Andy Reid is there and Chris Jones and Travis Kelce are playing, there ain't a soul who's betting against them, because you'd be crazy too. It doesn't mean that they're always going to win the game. But I grew up, people forget this because Peyton now is considered a top 5 quarterback. Up until he had the crazy comeback against Tom Brady, he was viewed as a choke artist. He really was. And that word sometimes can be strong, right? Sometimes you just play bad. Right? Did Lamar choke against the Chiefs? Or did he get tight? Did he just play poorly? Was it bad play calling? Like, Roy choked. John Vanderbilt choked. Peyton Manning, I thought, and I was a huge Peyton Manning guy in high school and in college up until he won that Super Bowl. I was rooting for him. I just rooted for the Colts because I loved watching him play. He got tight in the playoffs. Now, did he choke? Did he overthink it? Did he not play well? I don't know. But it was crazy to experience. And then once you win that championship, it kind of goes away. And for Rory, for example, like, he choked, but he already has 4 majors. So even if he never wins another major, which I disagree with, I think he's going to win one. Even Bryson said that. In the back of, like, in his resume, he goes, I'm a champion. And that's the one thing, and you could throw Burrow in this too, until you do it in football, 1, there's no guarantee. It's really hard. And 2, like, you always have that kind of pressure on your shoulder to get it done. You specifically and the team. But you're very dependent on the coaching staff. You're very dependent on, obviously, if you're a quarterback, the defense, and whether you're playing on the road, whether you're playing at home. But I know this, and this is what makes football so awesome because we've had historic collapses. Anyone listening to me for a long time knows I thought Brandon Staley was a joke. But the moment that happened on the road against Jacksonville a couple years ago in the playoffs, how could anyone take him seriously? I mean, that's one of, I think statistically, it's like the worst collapse in playoff history. Maybe the Bills against the Oilers had a bigger comeback, but it had to be right up there. But it was the way it happened, right? Trevor Lawrence had thrown all the picks. They were cruising, and then it's like, I don't even know if they have enough possessions to come back. And then they found a way to do it. Like 28-3. Now, part of it is because it was the Patriots, because it was Belichick and Brady. But let's face it, as big of a story as that is for the Patriots, it's honestly bigger of a story for the Atlanta Falcons and the collapse they had. You just never shake that. But I don't know, man. It's going to be fascinating to watch if the Bills and the Ravens, whenever you have an elite quarterback in the peak of his powers, there's no guarantee that, like, we couldn't get it done in his prime, but when he was older, Mike Shanahan came and Elway won a couple and then he retired. That is, you got to take care of business now. And I just think both these two quarterbacks, obviously there's more pressure on Lamar because how poor his playoff resume is than Josh, because a lot would chalk it up. It's not really his fault. The defense and the coaching staff, like, what the hell were they doing? But either way, you either win a championship or you don't. You either get it done in these big moments or you don't. And both of them are losing to the same guy in the same team. So I'm riveted by just disastrous choke jobs. I just tell me that this is going to be an epic collapse and I'm sitting on the couch. And the reality is most of us are, because you could argue that is more entertaining than anything in sports. Okay, Trevor Lawrence. My first reaction was, holy shit, that is insanity. And several days later, I haven't changed my opinion that much. And I think the conventional wisdom when it comes to these contracts is the price only goes up. It can only go up. That's actually not true. Stocks, for example, which players I think have a lot in comparison to, you're either ascending or you're descending. You're either going up or you're going down. You're not guaranteed to get better. Just because I buy something that's going up doesn't mean that it can't come down, right? Just because you buy something that's low doesn't mean it can't fly up. We see it all the time in football. See it all the time in sports. You sign guys to low contracts and they far outseed and exceed those expectations of the money you're paying them. And we have a long list of guys, especially in football, that you pay a lot of money to and do not live up to the contract. I'll defend overpaying guys in free agency because typically they have a 5, potentially a 6-year body of work. You have seen what they have done. This is essentially buying that it's going to get dramatically better than what it's been. Now, unlike a lot of people, I think, like on the internet, I don't just think Trevor Lawrence sucks. I don't like this guy over it. It's not really debatable that he has not lived up to the hype. Not even close. Andrew Luck, by year 3, you knew the guy was a rocket ship. He literally was rattling off playoff victories with a pretty average roster and, let's face it, a joke of a head coach. Trevor Lawrence last year, and here's where I knew, like at the combine, all these coaches in the media kind of area where they do their press conferences are just kind of lingering around. You can bullshit with them. And I've known Doug since I worked with him with the Eagles. And we were just shooting the shit, talking about his kids. And I started asking him about Trevor Lawrence, and he loves him. And it was not like he had no reason to lie to me. I mean, we were just kind of BSing. And it was clear, like, I don't think he's joking. He really likes him. And clearly by the Jags' actions, they really like the guy. And I'm all for really liking the guy and really believing in the guy. But wouldn't you rather pay an extra 15% of what you're willing to pay right now to just feel really good about this? You just guaranteed him almost $150 million the moment he signed his contract. The overall practical guarantees are $200 million. Like, if I'm going to sign one of those contracts, I can't have any questions. even if you're not Peyton Manning or Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, I still got to feel pretty good about you. This is where I go to the Lions. Could Jared Goff today think that he kind of got screwed? Because there is no number on a contract, if I'm Jared Goff, that should be lower than what Trevor Lawrence signs for. This is not about hype. This is not about what people projected me to be. And this notion, and listen, I like Albert Breer a lot, and I don't think he's wrong here. This contract represents what they think he's going to be. I think that's a crazy mindset to have. That's why you have draft picks. I'm drafting this guy number 1 overall, number 7 overall, number 15 overall, because of what I think he's going to be in the next 4 or 5 years. When I sign a guy to a contract, obviously when you're a younger player under 25, 26 years old, there's still room for growth. But you got to be a large percentage of what you're going to be. I've already had to experience. His best year was 2 years ago. He threw 25 touchdowns. Last year was an utter disaster, and I think the Jags would say, well, he was banged up. Well, okay. Can he play a season healthy and throw 35 touchdowns? Can he be clearly one of the best 6-7 quarterbacks in the NFL? Not a guy that many would say, God, there are a lot of weeks where he's not even a top 20 guy. I never understand. Let's just see a little more when you have a lot of questions. All for Micah Parsons right now after year 3. If the Cowboys want to give him an astronomical amount of money, get it. I have seen him play at a really high level for a long period of time right now. If he just maintains what he's been, we're in good shape. Obviously, you want him to improve, as you would with any young employee in any industry. But anytime you got to guess, like, I hope this works out, that's crazy when you pay, just premium amounts of money. Now, Jared Goff did get double the amount of a signing bonus. Trevor Lawrence got $37 million the moment he signed a contract, which is a lot of money to 99.99% of people. Jared Goff got $73 million. Anyone that's taken any, business or economic classes, time value money, you'd rather have money up front. Obviously, with how much shit costs and inflation, the dollar's lost, 20% of its value in like 3-year span. So big win for Jared Goff. But when it comes to overall guarantees, there's a pretty wide gap there. So if I'm Jared Goff, I'm probably not losing much sleep over this, but it's kind of crazy. I also don't quite understand if I'm the Jags, the moment Jared Goff signs his contract, whose resume is dramatically better, who's been doing it for a much longer period of time, also a number 1 pick, who has several seasons at a really high level that has led his team and put his team in the position to win a Super Bowl. Wouldn't you like to see just one season like, hey, coming off a rough year, let's bounce back, see if you can win us 10, 11 games, have us back in the playoffs, then we'll feel very comfortable doing this. Because we bought into the hype when we drafted you. We obviously really like the person, which matters at quarterback. The character, the work ethic, all that stuff is a part that's hard for us to quantify on the outside, which obviously they like, which I understand. But this is a production-based business. You have to produce on the field. Like, I don't know. If you're one of the great prospects of all time and have all this talent, he's like, well, we don't have the receivers. I don't know. You should be able to throw 30 touchdowns in 17 games in the way this game is officiated in 2024. So I'm not trying to act like I wouldn't want this guy on my team, but I don't ever understand the rush to sign guys. I would understand if he was going into his franchise tag year or he was a true free agent. You're like, he had our back against the wall. What were we going to do? Okay, I get it. It was a weird position. You were kind of stuck. You're not stuck at all. Pick up his 5th-year option, plays his 4th year, and let's evaluate another season. Like this notion that it's only going to go up. Well, what if he has another season just like he just had? Would you feel comfortable doing that again? Because if he has a season just like he just had, this contract's going to feel awful. It's going to feel terrible. And you did not have to do it. So I guess my overall reaction was, like most people, this feels insane. This feels overly aggressive. This feels overly aggressive for what? Like, what race are you running here? Are you afraid to get lapped to pay an extra $2 million per year next season? If things go great, well, great. Then we're all feeling good about it. But right now, I'd say universally around football, like, Good luck to you guys. That seems pretty bold. And that's where the Lions got to feel really, really good about the contract they signed. Obviously, they gave him a big signing bonus, but they know they can win with the guy. They've seen him a couple years ago win on the road in the cold in Green Bay, which is a huge question with Jared Goff, but he's never going to be a great outdoors quarterback. But they're a dome team, and their team's really good. And they know for the next several years, they can win with this guy. You cannot, with a straight face, say that with the Jags. You really can't. Because if it wasn't for one of the greatest playoff collapses we've ever seen, led by a guy that will never be a head coach ever again, they wouldn't have a playoff victory. They shouldn't have that playoff victory, but they do. And listen, Lawrence played really well in the second half. He showed a lot of mental toughness. But man, that first half also happened. And that's really what he's hanging his hat on, that game. Turns the ball over at just rapid rates. The picks. Here's the thing with Trevor Lawrence. And Andrew Luck was somewhat like this. He doesn't have a howitzer. I would not say that he has a top 6'7" arm in the NFL. So his game at the NFL level is predicated on timing, rhythm. He's got to play much closer to Peyton Manning and Phillip Rivers and those guys. And when you watch him play, that's not really how he plays. The fumbles were atrocious. I don't know, man. We always got to be early. Do you? Do you? Couldn't you just take a deep breath and see where this goes? That's where I think the biggest winner in this whole thing is Dakota Prescott. Now, I could not, if I was the Cowboys, sign him to this contract. Couldn't do it. I have to see how this season goes. Can you win some playoff games? Can you play better in January? Because if I'm signing you to this contract, and if anything, Dak would go, this contract, I'm way better than this guy. And he's not wrong. He's been better than Trevor Lawrence for a long period of time. Not even debatable. Under no measure could you make the argument that Trevor Lawrence is better than Dak Prescott. And obviously, Dak's been in the league playing at a high level for a much longer period of time than this guy. But I could not do it if I was the Cowboys. If I have to pay, quote unquote, next year premium after he wins 3 playoff games and we lose in the Super Bowl, great. That would be a historic moment for the Cowboys, given that they haven't made it to the NFC Championship game since the mid-90s. But I just don't know how you pay this money to Dak Prescott, because essentially you tie yourself to him for 3-4 years, and you're basically just cool with doing what you've been doing. At least the Jags have the opportunity. What could be, even though what could be, there's a decent chance that never materializes in anything. You do know what Dak is. You're just kind of hoping that he can have a hot stretch in the playoffs, which I've said for a while is definitely possible. We have seen guys who aren't as good as Dak have incredible stretches in the playoffs. That Flacco stretch is one of the craziest things we've ever seen. The Eli Manning stretches multiple times, it was an outlier toward his career. But when you do that, even if I got to pay you probably more than I'm comfortable with playing, as Brian Windhorst says, you never apologize for championships. And it's true. Ultimately, that Flacco contract didn't age well after he won the ring, but he won the freaking ring. And the Cowboys can't even get to the last weekend of the conference championship. I just think they're kind of in a weird position now. I can't imagine that had to be a jolting contract when it came out for the Cowboys brass. And I don't blame them. This notion of they wait too long. Yeah, you can make that argument for, position players. But with Dak, at this point in time, I think it's worth waiting. Another guy who I think's in a weird spot is Jordan Love. He hasn't made any money in his career relative to quarterbacks, right? He was a late first-round pick. Instead of getting his 5th-year option, I give the Packers credit. They kind of offered him this extension that was way lower than the 5th-year option, which was more than justified. He had never played a snap. It was 2 years, I think $11 or $12 million, which was a smart contingency plan for them. But then Jordan Love's last 8 games look unlike anything we've seen out of Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has never had a stretch like that. One, physically, he does not possess the arm that Jordan Love does. Jordan Love's 8-game stretch, while a small sample size, did look like Aaron Rodgers. That's what it looked like. And then he went in to Dallas on the road and eviscerated those guys. But if I'm Jordan Love, because if I play this out, Because if I have another year like the last 8 games and I'm a Pro Bowl level guy in the NFC, I'm 180, $200 million guy. And if I'm the Packers, based on even, I'm sure I love the guy. I feel very confident in the guy. I drafted the guy, Gudikins and LaFleur. What he showed last year was incredible. I still would like a little more before I cut that check. I'm probably offering more of the Cousins deal. Like, hey, man, we'll give you like 40, $45 million, but we're talking 100 guaranteed. We ain't sniffing the 200 number. If I'm Jordan Love and I'm confident in myself, now listen, football's risky. Guys get injured all the time. Things change quickly. I go, well, the infrastructure here is pretty awesome. My offensive weaponry is pretty badass. It's like the youngest unit in the league. Wide receivers, tight end. Now we add Josh Jacobs. Like, I'm feeling pretty good about my chances. Let's see how the first 8 games go. Then maybe we can talk contract extension in the middle of the season. Because I would not sign a quote-unquote team-friendly deal. And listen, even if you signed him to a Kirk Cousins contract, if that 8 games turned out to be just like an outlier of his career, that'd be a disaster, and that'd be a disaster fast. But if I'm Jordan Love, I'm probably feeling pretty confident that I can replicate what I just did and become one of the best quarterbacks in the NFC. Because look at his competition. That's the other thing. And the AFC is difficult. You got Mahomes, you got Josh Allen, you got Lamar Jackson, you got Joe Burrow, you got Justin Herbert. You got studs everywhere. In the NFC, it's like Brock Purdy, really good player, good team. Jared Goff, McVay once kicked him to the curb. Dakota Prescott. Because back to Dak, like, if I'm the Cowboys, let's play this out. Let's just see how it goes. And if we lose in the round 1 of the playoffs, maybe it's just time for us to pivot. And you can go to the Raiders, which I'm sure would be gladly pay you a lot of money because they would die to go to the playoffs. If I'm Jordan Love, like, I'm taking a deep breath. Tua, what's even to be said at this point? How could any human being, including Mike McDaniel, including Stephen Ross, including any Dolphin fan, be remotely comfortable discussing these type numbers for this player based on the information we have? We've seen 2 straight years. He was banged up 2 years ago, which is a concern. It's not his fault he's getting concussions, but he got them. And last year just fell apart, crumbled like a cookie. How could you even entertain discussing any of these numbers? I couldn't. I'm not acting like he's some scrub. I'm not acting like the guy should be a backup. But not everyone should get these amounts of money. We've seen it in the NBA for years. It's like, wait, DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine make the same amount as Anthony Davis and Steph Curry? It's like, yeah, not all contracts are equal, even if the money is. Because some guys have a dramatically bigger impact than others. And when you pay Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson a lot of money, those guys are ass kickers. When you pay Tua a lot of money, that just limits your cap space to have to surround him with talent because he can't do it by himself. Hell, we don't even know if he can do it when he has help in the biggest moments when it gets cold. So I don't even know what the discussion is there. To me, it's a no-brainer. We're playing this thing out. And last but not least, like, Brock Purdy has been objectively better than Trevor Lawrence. The only difference in the two guys is one guy was the most hyped guy since Andrew Luck, and the other guy was a 7th round Mr. Irrelevant. But on the field, Brock Purdy's been a way better player. David Lombardi, who covers the 49ers, tweeted out some statistics, and his agent retweeted it. I think the 49ers probably can't be happy with this number either, because now if Brock Purdy has another season like he did last year, Niners are one of the best teams. He throws 30-plus touchdowns. They win a couple playoff games. I mean, we're talking $210, $215 million a year. That's the price. I mean, that's the going rate. And the difference of like Tua is like this guy's proving it in big games. You're winning with this guy. Now, we could argue, is Purdy good enough? We still got to see more. I like him. I think he's been really good. But like, I've seen him play well in big games. I've seen him come through in big moments. Can't say that about a lot of these other guys. Definitely Tua Tagovailoa. Same with Dak Prescott. Guy falls apart in the playoffs. It's going to be awfully interesting. And I'm unfazed by like this money's all relative. It's not like, 55 sounds so big. No, this is the new number. But just because it's the new number doesn't mean everyone should get that number. Doesn't mean every team should sign these long-term contracts. And we've seen in recent memory some of these. Russell Wilson has been an utter disaster. It's one of the worst contracts in NFL history. The guy didn't even make it through 2 years. They cut him. They're eating $85 million in dead cap space. I've defended Dak. He got a lot of money, but at least he's giving you 12 wins a season and giving you a couple home playoff games. Now you're losing them, but at least you're hosting them. Man, NFL contracts got crazy, and they got crazy fast. Business is booming. No disputing that. A couple other things. Aiyuk went on TikTok and said the 49ers don't want me anymore. I guess he's vlogging his free agent. He's not even a free agent. His offseason. He's vlogging his contract negotiations. Jaden Daniels was a freshman at Arizona State when Aiyuk was there, and they're still buddies. Here's the thing, man. There have been a lot of different reports about a lot of different numbers. The Niners came in at like 25, 26. He wants over 30. My stance has been pretty clear. I'd be uncomfortable breaking the bank, even for a really good winning player, when my offense doesn't really operate like that. Obviously, if the 49ers can choose and all things were equal, they would get rid of Deebo Samuel and keep Brandon Aiyuk, but it's not that simple. They already paid Deebo Samuel. His contract impacts their salary cap. Brandon Aiyuk is, all these guys are getting paid. He wants his money. I do think this is a complicated negotiation. Now, is Brandon Aiyuk worth it to them to pay $28-29 million? I'd make the argument no. Now, if Deebo Samuel did not exist, I would probably change my argument, but he does. And his contract happened. And you could argue the way that they've played since they got Christian McCaffrey. Brandon Aiyuk's a fantastic player, and he's a productive player. And he can play on the outside and get open down the field, unlike Deebo Samuel. But Deebo Samuel exists. Like, they did that contract, which I think they kind of regretted it because the last 2 years has not gone perfectly for that player. But I think this is a complicated spot. Here's the problem. Like, the 49ers aren't just getting rid of you. This is not the NBA where it's like, they don't want me, I'm out. No, you just play for $14 million. What are you going to do? Not play well? Hurt your value? Yeah. Do I think ideally the 49ers would like to get this done? I do. Do I think they would love to pay him $25 million? I do. Do I think Aiyuk would want $30 million? Of course he does. But I don't see this getting done anytime soon because one thing with the 49ers, they drove a hard bargain with Nick Bosa, who plays the second most important position in the league and is just a way better player than Brandon Aiyuk in a vacuum. So I don't know. I think this is going to get ugly in training camp. And I'm not as phased by like putting stuff out on media, unfollowing people, TikTok and Instagram. Like, I don't really give a shit. Maybe it's just in my older age. Like, it doesn't mean anything to me because money talks, shit walks. Nothing else matters. And Brandon Aiyuk does not control any of this situation. If he doesn't show up to training camp, he gets fined. He just got fined $100,000 not showing up to minicamp, which here's the other thing I'd say. The 49ers have handled these pretty simply. Nick Bosa wanted a new contract. He showed up and just stood there. I guess Nick Bosa this last year when he held out. But Debo's a better example. He did the hold in. He showed up and just stood there on the side. I went to those practices, and he ended up getting paid. But, like, Ayuk's not Nick Bosa. So, like, taking that tack, I'm always a proponent of hold-ins. Show up, be around, be your smiley self, and just don't practice. Because holding out creates such a big firestorm, and it doesn't really do anything. Ultimately, you're not going to be any more likely to pay the guy. Here's the other thing. The 49ers drafted a wide receiver in the first round. I don't think that was just random. Now, it's not simply because of Aiyuk. It's also because of Deebo, and they need better outside weapons, guys that can get open down the field, because they could not get open against the Kansas City Chiefs. Aiyuk could. The other guys couldn't. Be interesting how this plays out. A couple other things. In-season Hard Knocks is going to do an entire division. They're going to do the AFC North, which is actually pretty fascinating. Those are teams that I'd definitely be interested in watching. You got Tomlin, the Steelers, you got the Deshaun Watson situation, you got Burrow and the Bengals and the Ravens. So Hard Knocks, I've said for a while, isn't necessarily for me. I dabbled a little in season Hard Knocks. Was it last year or 2 years ago with the Miami Dolphins? Wasn't too terrible. Had definitely had some moments. It's kind of cooler to see because the ebb and flow of a season. To me, it's better than the training camp one. But I like this idea. I'll definitely pay attention if there's some fun clips. Maybe I'm more inclined to hit play on some episodes. Belichick has a 24-year-old girlfriend that was making the rounds. I don't know what anyone expects. A 72-year-old guy worth probably hundreds of millions of dollars. Who do you think he's going to date? 68-year-old? What do you think the guy's going to do? So props to Bill for, chasing younger women and having a good time. Live your own life. Don't let judgment creep in. Clearly, Bill doesn't give a shit. He's single and he's ready to mingle. And $5 million per ad for Netflix on Christmas Day. They paid $150 million. They paid $75 million per game, which on its surface, you're like, geez, it's a lot of money per game. Well, I don't know how many ads are in a given game, but just think there are a lot of breaks. And one ad, how many ads are typically in a break? 2 or 3 minimum? Are they going to make this money back pretty seamlessly? Now, maybe they don't get $5 million per ad for every single slot, but they're definitely getting millions because one thing we know is those Christmas games, if I had to guess, 15 plus million people are going to watch. The games are just going to be on at every single person's house. Some of you guys are a little more serious than others in terms of the no TV rule. I think that was probably more of a thing in like the 70s, 80s, 90s. Maybe we've become a little more lax as a society. And listen, my family always leaned TV on, sports on, even a Christmas going on in the background. Not saying we were dialed into the game as we were eating, but TV was on. I would imagine that number of families has grown dramatically to just have the television on during Christmas throughout the festivities. And definitely eating is just on now. And the one thing that's easier to justify than some is football. Let's have the football game on in the background. Who's really complaining? I don't think anybody. So Netflix, when it's all said and done, what if they double their investment? Yeah, we spent 150, but we made 300. I don't think it's inconceivable. And then that number moving forward probably only goes up for the NFL because this was somewhat of a one-off. And I've said forever, this is only the beginning for Netflix. Like in 15, 20 years, to think that we're just going to turn on NBC, Fox, and CBS, you would have to be pretty naive to the way everything has changed in the last 5 years. Like all this stuff's going to be streamed. NBC is holding on for dear life. There's a reason that they push Peacock so hard because Peacock has to succeed for their business to succeed. Well, Netflix is just an independent streaming service that literally everybody has. I think the number in America is well over 100 million people are Netflix subscribers. I personally don't know one human being in my life. Now, granted, I'm not hanging out with many 60 and 70-year-olds, but my mother, who's in her mid-70s, watches Netflix every single night. Now, granted, on my account, but still, she loves it. But no one my age or younger does not use Netflix. I would say daily basis, like every night you get in bed, maybe the first thing you click is anything new on Netflix? I would say the average for someone under 50, a family, I'd be shocked if it's not minimum 5 times a week that someone in the house doesn't go to Netflix and click what's on. And we know how they did with the Brady roast, which was the most streamed thing they've ever done. This is going to work. This is going to work really well. Sucks Mike Tyson got injured. Who would have thought a 55-year-old guy, would have some question marks getting ready for a fight? But that fight would have been massive, him and Jake Paul. It would have been huge. My guess is 50 million people would have watched because they would have promoted the living hell out of it because they control it all. They control every time you go to the screen. So why whenever I see the top 10 things trending, the top 10 movies, the top 10 shows, top 10 docuseries, maybe they are, or maybe those are the ones Netflix wants to promote. I don't know. They can really say whatever they want. They can do whatever they want. And one thing we know is when you spend $150 million on 2 games, you're going to promote the living hell out of that thing. It's going to work. And get ready, because I would guess this, whenever the next thing comes up, when they negotiate the television deal, Netflix is going to be a major player.